I had run into the same problem over and over for years every time I would try to organize primarily trips like vacations with friends or family. If I had found like an Airbnb or a beach house or whatever it was, and I knew how much it was going to cost, and I knew how many people it could fit, how many people it could sleep. And so I would get a group chat together and I would send out this invite and I would say, hey, who wants to do this? And the first thing people would say is, well, how much does it cost? And I wouldn't really have an answer for them. And I found myself in the middle of this kind of chicken and egg pricing dynamic where I couldn't tell people how much it would cost until I knew how many people wanted to go. And people wouldn't really want to commit to going until they knew how much it would cost. And so as I started thinking to myself, I should just build a tool that solves my own problem of how you're raising money a whole lot better, simpler, faster, cheaper, and freer in the sense of like personal freedom to coordinate and collaborate with your community.
Welcome to the Afluencer podcast. Today we have Jonathan Kaplan. He's the CEO and co-founder of tippingpoint.app, which is a cool, personalized crowdfunding platform for anyone who has ever organized a trip before and had the headaches of trying to split the cost of an Airbnb for when you don't know how many people are coming. Other sort of use cases for groups. This is the podcast for you. And we've got opportunities for influencers who want to help spread the word about Tipping Point as well. Welcome, Jonathan. Appreciate you joining us for the show.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brett. Happy to be here. And really excited to be on Afluencer. It's been a lot of fun playing around the platform. Excited to see what comes of it. I had run into the same problem over and over for years every time I would try to organize primarily trips like vacations with friends or family. I would always run into this issue where I had already kind of planned out the trip. I had found like an Airbnb or a beach house or whatever it was, and I knew how much it was going to cost, and I knew how many people it could fit, how many people it could sleep. And so I would get a group chat together and I would send out this invite and I would say, hey, who wants to do this? And the first thing people would say is, well, how much does it cost? And I wouldn't really have an answer for them because depending on how many people went, would determine the price per person, right? I was just going to take the cost of the vacation home, divide it by the number of people, and get the same amount per person. And I found myself in the middle of this kind of chicken and egg pricing dynamic where I couldn't tell people how much it would cost until I knew how many people wanted to go. And people wouldn't really want to commit to going until they knew how much it would cost. And so what we'd end up doing is this very convoluted sort of, I would set a deadline in the group chat and I would tell them, okay, you've got 30 days to tell me yes or no. And every time somebody opts in, I would calculate the current price per person and I would post that. And then if somebody had to back out or cancel, then the price would go back up. And then typically at the end of that deadline, I would say, okay, so this is the number of commitments I have. This is the current price per person. Who wants to go? And that was a way to actually solve that problem, but it was very cumbersome. And I kept looking for an app or for, something like a PayPal or a Venmo or a Cash App to offer this feature of splitting one fixed cost amongst participants, and nobody ever developed it. And so as I started thinking to myself, I should just build a tool that solves my own problem, I was also watching some other issues with crowdfunding and fundraising, primarily related to censorship and confiscation in January of 2021, right after the January 6th protests at the Capitol. Stripe, the payment processor, deplatformed the Trump campaign. And I thought, wow, that's pretty intense if a payment processor is going to deplatform president of the United States. And then I think it was about a year later when the Canadian trucker protest was ongoing and millions of donations poured in through GoFundMe. And they decided they were just going to confiscate those donations and not return them, not give them to their intended participants. There were issues where people would try to raise money on PayPal, but depending on the industry or the item being sold, PayPal would confiscate money saying, well, that goes against our terms of service. And so I thought, okay, it seems like there's a better way to do crowdfunding and fundraising in general. So in addition to creating this tool of being able to split this one fixed cost in a way that can dynamically calculate how much attendance is going to be per person for a project or event, I thought I can also include all the other ways that you could crowdfund or fundraise, but by building it differently than a lot of these other platforms have been built, I can provide additional features that would make the experience, regardless of how you're raising money, a whole lot better, simpler, faster, cheaper, and freer in the sense of like personal freedom to coordinate and collaborate with your community.
That's very cool. Yeah, that initial use case resonates with me. I was between nodding and shaking my head just from personal experience because 100% been through that as a de facto trip organizer, right? Amongst the friends, there's only so many of us organize the trips, and that's the thing is the Airbnb route, usually the more cost-effective route, and it is a logistical nightmare in terms of that and the questions that come up. And then, I mean, sometimes you kind of default to the hotel. I don't care, just book your own hotel room, but not the most cost-effective because once N as the number in your standpoint, your terminology, which I thought was very apt, goes up, then the total cost goes up, and now you're losing out on the cost savings. So that is cool from the initial standpoint. So you guys are then kind of going beyond like the Kickstarters, the GoFundMe's, from my experience, those are more for, hey, here's one cause. I want as much money thrown into this cause from as many people as I can. That seems to be those use cases where you've got something that's more applicable to private people. Hey, we've got 7 people here. We can kind of configure this more in terms of this is what we're looking to raise the money for. We're crowdfunding, but we're doing it with a set number of people or friends or an intimate group. Is that fair to say in terms of the main difference?
So there's a couple differences between Tipping Point and more traditional crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. You definitely have the ability to use Tipping Point just as a tool within a pre-existing community. So if you already have a group of friends or neighbors or family or classmates or church members or coworkers, whatever it might be, if you have this pre-existing network, then you can create a Tipping Point campaign and you can just send it out with that network, and you can allow people that you already know to contribute to your idea. But we also have set it up to where it's a tool that can be basically layered on top of any kind of community. So if you are an influencer, content creator, if you've got thousands, millions of followers on social media, you can simply create a Tipping Point campaign. You can get a link, and then you can just share that link with whoever you want. So the website doesn't right now have like a page where you can browse like other people's campaigns, and we may add that later on in the future. But yes, we're definitely trying to focus on people who have pre-existing communities or followers or relationships, and allowing them to better coordinate and communicate with their communities to help raise money to bring ideas to life. So we are different in that sense, in that we provide a couple of different styles of raising money. The other main way I would say is that we are built on Ethereum. So rather than having a traditional legacy finance payment processor on our back end that actually moves the money from contributor to fundraiser, we utilize the Ethereum blockchain. And by swapping out these centralized middlemen for a peer-to-peer network, we can provide all these benefits of the seizure resistance and the censorship resistance, the deplatforming resistance that I kind of mentioned earlier, as well as being faster, more secure, far cheaper, etc.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When did you decide that, hey, not only do I want a crowdfunding platform that's going to be more flexible, that's going to suit my needs here, whether I'm going for Airbnb or it's an influencer trying to raise money amongst their followers. So not only do we want this thing to be more flexible, but by the way, we also want it to be more secure. We want it to be blockchain based versus, like you said, the traditional route. Did that go into your decision making early on, or is that something you kind of pivoted to as you saw what the world was becoming in terms of the ability of sort of central agencies to lock stuff up? I'd love to hear your thought process around that.
Yeah, it was mostly the latter. We are not trying to make Tipping Point a crypto app so much as just an app that happens to use crypto. You don't need to be a super savvy, crypto native to be able to use Tipping Point. There's no Tipping Point token. There's no investment required. It's not like one of these, sort of speculative, like the meme coins that are really popular right now. We really just wanted to use Ethereum on the back end, kind of abstracted away from the end user as a way to accomplish our goals, which is to make the platform itself essentially as fast, as secure, as cheap as possible, having basically eliminated the middlemen that get in between peer-to-peer transactions. Now we can charge a much, much, much lower fee for anybody who wants to raise money on Tipping Point. And it really worked out well in terms of designing the infrastructure, because the way that Ethereum is designed, it's built on these series of smart contracts. And so whenever you're setting up a Tipping Point campaign, often you are trying to coordinate with your community in a way that says, if you will all do this, then so will I. Like if you wanted to have a fundraiser where, look, I want to raise $10,000 to, build an orphanage in South America or something. Well, if you get 5,000, that's a great effort, but you're not going to be able to do what you want to do if you only raise half the money you need. And so with a smart contract infrastructure, you can basically have people make commitments to send money, but only if certain rules are met. It's the way of taking this programming style of if X, then Y, and we can build that into what you're trying to do. And by doing that, we eliminate the risk of failed campaigns. So you as a fundraiser know that you're either going to collect all the money you need to accomplish your goal, or you're not going to even start collecting money. So you don't have to go back after weeks or months of trying and have to tell people, well, I only got 50%, so here's your refund. And on the other side, if you're a contributor, you can opt into ideas knowing that there's no risk of maybe donating to a failed campaign, having to harangue the guy that you donated to after a month or two of not reaching that goal. Hey, I see you're only 50% of the way there. Can I get my money back? You're not throwing money into a situation where, okay, I want to donate to charity, but they're going to need a couple of million to accomplish their goal. And I don't want to donate $100 and feel like that's a wasted drop in the bucket. So being able to make a commitment on the blockchain that shows, look, if 999 other people will donate $100, so will I. And then rather than donating $100 and feeling like you're the only one doing it and you're just this drop in the ocean, well, you know that your money is only going to move from your account if X number of other people do that as well. And so figuring out that not only does this infrastructure allow us to accomplish our real world goal, which is to help coordinate and communicate amongst groups in a way where they can all align on, we're all going to do the same thing at the same time, we're all going to send this amount of money if these conditions are met, worked very, very well with the way that this blockchain network is designed. And then, of course, like I said, it also provides all these other benefits that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, very cool. That is definitely an awkward moment from the fundraising standpoint. I had this conversation with a friend of mine who was kind of polling his business owner friends. He raised money for his team's Little League. They ended up with too much money in his case. And his question was, or they didn't need it. It was something where they didn't need it. And he said, what would you want as someone who donated? Would you want us to keep it and roll it towards a future year? Would you want us to return it? Would it sketch you out if we return that? And he received different answers from everyone. In terms of, my initial answer was, if you give it back to me, I'm going to have a lower opinion of you. And then when he went through the backstory, I said, okay, well, maybe it's okay in that case to return the money. But it's a very awkward moment. And then you got to describe it. And sounds like that's really a good solution in terms of, hey, either this funds or it doesn't. And you don't have that weird half-funded moment where there's almost no good solution in terms of going back to the person who donated and say, hey, we didn't, like you said, we're only 50% there, we're underfunded, so we're going to give you the money back, that type of thing. From a technical standpoint, so you chose to build Tipping Point on Base in comparison with Solana and some other chains. Can you give us maybe a brief background in terms of the decision process there?
Yeah, we simply wanted to abstract away as much of the crypto complexity into the background. So we decided to go with Ethereum as the largest, the oldest, the most secure, the most decentralized, the most proven of all the smart contract networks. If this was something we could have built on Bitcoin as the OG blockchain, then we would have. But Bitcoin is a very sort of strict programming language. It allows you to basically send and receive Bitcoin and nothing else, whereas Ethereum allows you to program just about any sort of idea into the blockchain that you might want, and it's a whole lot more flexible. And with the layer 2 scaling solution that Ethereum has implemented over the last few years, the transactions on the network, if you pick a platform like Coinbase's Base platform, transactions go through in a couple of seconds at most, and they might cost fractions of a penny. And so being able to essentially abstract away the complex nature of sending a blockchain transaction to where when you go on Tipping Point, you don't have to worry about the fees, calculating how much gas costs to send on a blockchain. You don't have to worry about having Ethereum in your wallet. The entire platform's denominated in dollars, by the way. So for people who are listening to this and they're thinking, oh, I don't want to have to go buy a bunch of crypto just to be able to contribute to something. Well, it's all done in a special type of crypto dollar called a stable coin, which is basically a crypto representation of a dollar. So you raise money in dollars, you contribute dollars. You don't have to worry about having Ethereum or paying gas fees or anything like that. On Tipping Point, you basically opt into a campaign, and then if the campaign succeeds, and only if it succeeds, will you pay a small fee, which again is much, much lower than anywhere else that you pay. And it's great because Ethereum is now old enough and mature enough to where we have all these tools and solutions that allow us to have transactions that take place behind the scenes that don't require a whole lot of understanding on the user's end to do anything. And it just ended up being a really good platform to build what we were trying to build. Our goal is you don't have to be a computer programmer, you don't have to be an economist, you don't have to be a crypto investor, you don't have to own Ethereum. All you have to be able to do is connect your wallet or put in your email or log in with Google. Boom, you're connected to the platform. And then If you have stable coins, you can immediately start contributing to causes. If you don't have them, we have a Coinbase widget on the website. So you put in a credit or debit card and you can trade 100 regular dollars for 100 crypto dollars, and then you're good to go. And of course, if you're collecting money, you don't even have to do that second part. All you need to do is spend 30 seconds logging in at Tipping Point, picking a display name. That's the only information we need from you. You don't have to put in any other sensitive data about your real name, your phone number, your email, your bank accounts, your social security number, your birth date. None of that. All you have to do is connect a wallet, or if you don't have one, we can create one for you in the background. And all the tools that Ethereum provides to be able to do this allowed us to kind of start with all this crypto infrastructure, but end up with a product that I really am trying to make as easy as possible for someone like my mom to just, okay, go to tippingpoint.app, click sign in with email, type in your email, boom, you have a wallet. Okay, create a campaign. And then if she wants to contribute, then it's just a matter of, she's used to putting her credit or debit card into most websites to buy stuff. And it's the exact same situation on Tipping Point to deposit funds. Takes a couple of minutes, boom, you're good to go.
Yeah, very cool. It is a fun conversation because we could clip the first 2 minutes and show it to my mom, right? Same thing. And they can understand it, or you can get into the back end of it, which has been very interesting also from the mechanics of the crypto standpoint. Let's move into marketing a little bit. What's been working for you in terms of getting the word out on tippingpoint.app?
Well, I'm really glad to be working with you on Afluencer because, I actually spent most of my life trying to stay off social media. I just find it draining. I'm a bit more introverted than your average person. I didn't want all the attention. And so, I had accounts on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, mostly just to keep track of the news or follow accounts on various topics that I'm interested in. And then suddenly I have this idea for a business and I want to tell the world about it. And I've spent the last 15 years of my life actively trying to avoid being on social media. So in talking with my co-founder about the best way to tell the world about this, I thought, well, even though we would like your average person who just wants to raise money from their friends, their family, their classmates, their coworkers, etc., to do, whatever smaller things they want, I thought where Tipping Point could really shine is in helping to coordinate amongst very, very large communities. And I thought, well, then we need to be talking to the content creators and the influencers. If you have the thousands or millions of followers on social media, regardless of the platform, you're in a great position to be able to bring really big ideas to life. And kind of like when we were talking earlier about trying to raise money to do like a vacation, what we found with designing Tipping Point is that when you have an idea that requires other people and their money, quite frequently, the problem is not that you don't know enough people. It's not that they're not interested in what you want to do. And it's not even that they don't have the money. Quite often you have all of the things you need. It's that it can be very difficult to communicate and coordinate to get everyone on the same page at the same time. And I think that we haven't really seen, aside from maybe a handful of like viral GoFundMes, typically when there's some sort of, like a natural disaster, like we're seeing with the California wildfires or that sort of thing. And it's great that, people are able to do that, but I think it should be a lot more common than it is for somebody who has 1 million followers to be able to organize and energize and bring ideas to life. And I think that's where Tipping Point's going to shine, because there might be some things that you can only do if you get hundreds of thousands of people to contribute $5 or $10 a piece, or if you could get 1 million people to contribute $10 a piece. If you're one of these like Mr. Beast style influencers, asking someone to contribute $10 isn't that much. But if you have millions of people that are willing to do this, well, suddenly you could raise $10 million like that. And think about what kind of ideas might you be able to bring to life if you could coordinate and energize your crowd like that. And, like we mentioned just a few minutes ago, you can do it in a way where if somebody presents me as a contributor, as a follower with an idea, and they say, look, we want you to donate $10, that's all that we need. And we also want millions of other people to do that because our idea is going to necessitate millions of dollars. So I'm thinking, I'm not really going to want to do this because how do I know if I donate $10 that 1 million other people are going to do the same thing? But with Tipping Point, we can set it up to where, yeah, you can opt in and you can pledge your $10, but you only have to send the money if 999,999 people also agree to do that. So it's totally risk-free on your part. And I'm really excited to see what people start thinking of. Like, yeah, it's going to be great if we can crowdsource fundraising for, terrible situations like the California wildfires, but it could also just provide a whole lot of fun and excitement. If somebody wants to rent out the Las Vegas Sphere to advertise their brand or their channel or whatever, it's something like $500,000 a day. But if you've got 500,000 followers and you could ask each of them for $1 a piece, hey, suddenly your whole community can now promote its cause, its beliefs, its ideas, whatever it's working on to the world. And I'm really excited to see people with really large followings use Tipping Point, because they're going to be able to bring ideas to the table that can really only be done with really large amounts of people and large amounts of money. And now we've made that feasible in a way that I just don't think was feasible before with a lot of these other platforms.
Yeah, great point. And I don't think it is possible today, right? When we think about the wildfire relief, you always see the Red Cross link sent out, and that's just it's very standardized, right? And this is the only way to donate, and this is what goes out. And if you're an influencer who wants to support, you kind of go by the standard ways. And then the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking through, I'm a very cool, point use case is that it doesn't track back to the person. If you send out a link, Red Cross, it just kind of goes into this giant swath of money and they manage it. And there's no personal, I guess, credit to the influencer who raised it. And then they also have no discretion over how the money is used. So this is a very cool use case in terms of being able to do a personal fundraiser for however they would like, and kind of throw their creativity around it. And also kind of laughed when you were talking about the social media, because I'll have that come up at more, I would say, networking or family events or anything. What is Brett? What's he doing on social media? I'm doing nothing on social media. Like you, I don't do any of the social media stuff. That's why when if we need something to promote, we do our own collab and have our influencers do it. Like, that's not me. I don't want to do any of that stuff, but I see the power in it as you do. And that's the kind of the point of having other experts do it, right? If they've grown to 100,000 or million followers, they know what they're doing, where you and I, we're just kind of observers hanging out in the background. We don't necessarily, but we're happy to bring in someone else, right? To kind of promote whatever they want, and that synergy there. Let's talk about the future of Tipping Point, and then maybe even beyond the crowdfunding or next gen. What's the vision here? The old product roadmap? What are you noodling on? What's potentially coming out next?
Yeah, so we have we just released our version 1. We spent about a year building just before the holidays, and so now we're just getting our big marketing push started. And we kind of want to take a step back and see who uses Tipping Point, who gets the most value out of it, and then we really want to keep building features for those communities. So rather than assuming we know which industry, which niche, which community is going to really want to use Tipping Point, I have assumptions like anybody who's active on meetup.com. If you're constantly trying to get a meetup organized for your city or your organization, being able to now have a tool that you can send a link out to all of your meetup.com people and saying, hey, I was thinking about organizing a volleyball tournament, or I was thinking about hosting an event, or I kind of want to rent out a restaurant, who's interested. That's something where I feel like it's going to be a very obvious use case, but I'm also very open to being surprised. So right now we've got 4 different campaign types, 2 crowdfunders where everyone at the end of the campaign will pay the same amount, and 2 fundraisers where users can contribute whatever amount they'd like. We are going to look at who's using Tipping Point and how they're using it, and we're very open to customer or user feedback to then build out additional features, particularly for those folks who are trying to sell physical products, because right now we're oriented more towards either the digital space or simply moving money from some people to others, to where they can immediately go, book that venue or pay those workers or whatever the cause might be. But if there needs to be further tools built out, we're willing to do that. We do have one feature in the pipeline that I'm very excited about, which is not really about collecting money, but it's actually more about coordinating your community and reducing or eliminating the number of people who RSVP and then don't show up. And so this is going to be our refundable deposit feature. So if you are, let's say, throwing a party and you're not trying to ask your friends or family to pay money, but you really don't want to buy pizza for 30 people and then only have 10 people show up, right? So we're going to set up a Tipping Point campaign to where you can say, look, you can set up a minimum number of people to where if you don't hit that minimum, people won't even have to pay deposits in the first place. So as you're planning out your party or your event or your idea, you can say, look, if I get enough interest, then I would like anyone who is interested, when you RSVP, send me a $10 deposit. And we're going to have it to where you can either log into Tipping Point and, manually click as they, walk in the door, or if it's digital, if they hop onto the Zoom call, you can refund that deposit right there, or they can simply scan a QR code on your phone and the deposit will instantly be returned to them. And so this is a way where if people say that they're going to come to your event right now, if they flake, and maybe there's some reputational damage, but otherwise there's not really any cost. They don't have any skin in the game, right? But if you can tell people, look, I'm willing to pay for the pizza and the beer, or I'm willing to rent out this venue, or I'm willing to be the guy spearheading the charge and actually planning all this stuff, I'm willing to do that. But from y'all's end, I just need a bit more of a guarantee that you're going to support me like I'm trying to support you. So as a campaign creator, you can set a minimum number of people that are going to be required for this to even kick in. Then you can set a deposit amount. If I can get at least 10 people to RSVP for the party, I'd like each of them to pay a deposit of $10. And then again, once they start showing up, you can either refund that deposit or, hey, if they flake, well, at least now they've paid for the pizza that they're not going to eat. So we're very interested to see how Tipping Point can bridge out from being just a way to crowdfund or fundraise money to a way that can utilize financial commitments to better coordinate human activity so that we can reduce uncertainty, reduce risk and planning, and help everybody get on the same page at the same time so that your community can coordinate and plan in ways that might be very difficult or filled with friction today. So we're going to be working on that feature, and then we'll be adding some other little tidbits like expanding the number of funding options. Right now it's just dollars, but we're going to work on adding euros and pesos, etc. And then trying to, again, mostly take a step back and watch our users use the platform and then build according to them rather than just assuming we know what the market's going to want and deciding on a 3-year roadmap right now. So we're really just excited for folks like you to be able to give us a voice and allow us to put ourselves out there now that we finally built this tool. And yeah, really excited to see how people end up using it.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, any cause that forces these indecisive people into decision, it's the bane of social organizing existence. Just tell me, are you coming or not? And who's going to be there? Maybe last minute, it's like, hey, I got to put myself out. I'm organizing it. I'm doing this. And we just need, all we want is a decision. This is beautiful. I'm all for it. Last one, kind of a fun one. I know it's not a financial show, but do we have price targets or potential on Bitcoin, Ethereum for 2025? We've had Inauguration Day. I don't think we've ever had a crypto-friendly administration before, to put it lightly. Mm-hmm. What do you see from Bitcoin, Ethereum in the year ahead here?
Yeah, there's a lot of big stuff happening. I think if you've been in the space for a while, this is about as bullish as you've ever been across the board, or should be, because just any day now we can be expecting all sorts of different news to come out the pipeline. I tend to think that a big driver of prices in the crypto space is actually not so much these sort of incidental news-driven items of something like if President Trump decides that we do want a strategic Bitcoin reserve and he commits the US to, stockpiling a certain amount, I think that is sort of a news item that could drive prices insanely high, probably another couple of 100,000 from here. So right now, I think Bitcoin's just above 100,000, and I wouldn't be surprised that if we got an announcement of something like that we could see it double. I tend to think that we'll probably continue the bull market through at least the first half of the year, if not maybe towards the end of the year. Since Bitcoin's inception, it tends to move in these 4-year cycles, and I think that's in large part related to the fact that it was created around the same time as the 2008 financial crisis, and that created a new financial paradigm, not just for the US, but for the world, where we basically created a bunch of money out of nothing, and the average age of that debt was about 4 years. And so every 4 years, we have to pay off the debt, and of course, we don't have the money to do that, so we simply create more money to pay off that debt and roll it over, sort of like getting a new credit card once you've maxed out the first one and you just shift the balance and keep going. And rather than anything specific to Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, I think it's actually the fact that we just see a huge amount of newly created fiat currency every 4 years that is sort of a rising tide that lifts all boats. So even though there are some really exciting things like, Ethereum has another big upgrade called Pectra coming up in a couple of months. I know Solana's got Fire Dancer that they're aiming to release this year. So we should see fundamental improvements across the board. And of course, the macro and political landscape is very well suited for crypto assets to do quite well. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a matter of there's only so many Bitcoin, there's only so much Ethereum, and there's potentially an unlimited number of dollars or euros or pesos or bolivars or what have you. So as long as that continues, then I remain bullish on these assets. But I'm also excited to see that we're starting to enter a world where people are building real use cases. Bitcoin itself as sound money, I think it's solved its product market fit. That's all it needs to do. On Ethereum, it's always been touted as sort of this world computer that's going to lead to an internet of money. And we keep waiting to see, like, okay, well, what kind of use cases come from that? And we've already seen decentralized finance or NFTs or decentralized autonomous organizations, all great ideas. And as somebody building on Ethereum, I'm happy to present yet another idea of how we can utilize these new technologies to create apps and products and services that don't so much rely on that sort of speculative investment that requires you to take investment risk to partake of it. This is something that just provides a pure utility to the end user, and I think shows why somebody might want to invest in a token like Ethereum is because we are able to build things like Tipping Point that I simply could not build on our pre-existing internet of data. But now that we have this internet of money, all sorts of new ideas come to life. So, hey, maybe somebody can use Tipping Point to go raise a bunch of money for another Ethereum idea and continue to show the world what we can do with this new technology. So it's a very exciting time to be in the space, and especially to be building on something like we've got already with Ethereum.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, this is one of the greatest, most practical Ethereum use cases I've heard. And, I'm more of an armchair observer, but in the business world, and I always hear Ethereum in finance, but I've never seen it from a business application. And then you've got stablecoin, where there's an application here, and I've heard with the new administration that there's potential there as well, right? In terms of ripping out kind of that old legacy backbone. So we'll have to have you back, Jonathan, to talk about crypto again in the future as we kind of march through the year. For now, for Tipping Point, how can our listeners, viewers, how can they sign up for a Tipping Point account? I know we've got tippingpoint.app as the URL. How else can they sign up, and how can they follow you on social media?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Our website, like you just said, is tippingpoint.app, app. We're not in the App Store right now because we, again, want to make sure that people can't be censored or deplatformed. And I didn't want to give other companies like Apple or Google the ability to sort of determine whether or not people can use this service. So if you want to have it as an app on your phone or tablet, go to tippingpoint.app, click that menu at the top right corner of your browser. You should have an option that says download or save to homepage. And we have formatted the app to where once you do that and you have the little icon that you can click on, you can use it very much like an app rather than feeling like just another tab in your browser. We have links at the bottom of our homepage to our Discord and our Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter as we announce new updates and changes to the app. And we would encourage anyone who's interested to join our Discord. I am in there all day, every day. Happy to answer questions, happy to clarify examples. And on the website, we do have both a getting started page that can walk you through the process of signing up for an account and onboarding and depositing some funds. And we also have a how it works page that goes a bit more into detail on each of the different campaign styles we have, describes how those can be used, gives you some examples. So really just tippingpoint.app for right now, but hopefully I can come back on here in a couple of months, maybe with some stories about folks we found off Afluencer and the kind of ideas they've brought to life. And based on that experience, hopefully we'll have a few more features to announce as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's plan for that. Plan for a return visit in the spring. And we will get the link to your current collab below the show here as well. So our influencer users can apply and you can connect with them as well. And you can connect with Jonathan. Again, we'll get the link to the collab in the show notes. So we've got Jonathan Kaplan, CEO, co-founder with Tipping Point. So it's tippingpoint.app to sign up. Thanks so much. It's been a really fun and varied conversation. It's been great.
Thanks for having me, Brett. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.